The Chosen People is sponsored by NetWell. Healthcare costs are rising, and it can feel overwhelming. But at NetWell, we believe there's a better way. Imagine being the part of a community, a family where people just like you share medical expenses. With NetWell, you get affordable care without the burden of surprise bills or sky-high premiums. We're more than traditional healthcare sharing. We offer access to trusted providers, telemedicine, dental, and mental health services. Your well-being is our priority, and we're here for you like family. Join the NetWell family today at netwell.com. Affordable care, trusted community, your health, your way.
Previously on The Chosen People. Abram and Lot were exhausted after overseeing the grueling sojourn south through the notoriously treacherous desert called the Negev. A devastating famine had swept through the land. It compelled their band of expatriates to carry their wealth on the backs of donkeys and their treasures on the humps of camels until they were eventually forced to enter the lions and vipers' territory on the long, barren desert road to Egypt.
Abram! What did I tell you? No, don't look over. But listen carefully. That's the 5th time I've caught them staring today.
And Sarai? If I tell them she's my wife, they'll kill me. But if I tell them she's my sister, they'll probably spare me.
Yeah, and not to mention, we'd probably benefit from any potential suitors Sarah might have.
Abram, you would tell a half-truth and deny me the protection of my husband? Lie to spare yourself and ship me off to an Egyptian warlord?
Abram, who is Sarai to you?
Your Highness, I beg forgiveness. Sarai is my wife. Just as your spies have surely told you. The gossip, it's true. I was afraid of what would happen to me if a man desired my wife.
Abram felt rebuked by Pharaoh's words, by God's words, and knew that despite his assuredness that he was doing what he thought was right, he never should have left the land he had been promised. His mistakes had almost cost him and Sarai their integrity and their lives.
I love you, Abram, and I always will. You've always been a bit of a brother to me. And you're everything an older brother should be. Your sense of duty and loyalty are unmatched. When I look back on my life, I want to feel like I did something of significance. That I achieved something that no one else has done before.
In times of plenty, peace and conflict intersect, and two kinsmen face a choice that will echo through the ages. Shalom, my friends, from here in the Holy Land of Israel. I'm Yael Eckstein with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and welcome to The Chosen People. Each day we'll hear a dramatic story inspired by the Bible, stories filled with timeless lessons of faith, love, and the meaning of life. Through Israel's story, we'll find this truth, that we are all chosen for something great. Remember to follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. This way, you'll never miss an episode, and it will also be discovered by more people looking for messages of hope and faith. In the vast space of podcasting, these small steps actually make a huge difference. So thank you, as we say in Hebrew, toda rabah, for making our mission possible. Let's begin. Imagine a vast expanse of sand and sky stretching as far as the eye can see. Now picture two men, not just any men, but pioneers of a promise, standing at the crossroads of destiny. Abram and Lot. Two names, two paths, one God. As we journey into this story inspired by Genesis 13, let us ask ourselves, what does it mean to choose? How do we navigate the landscape of our lives? Is it by sight or is it by faith?
Cybersecurity Awareness Month is still going strong, and LifeLock is here with a message about phishing. That's phishing with a PH. the scams cybercriminals use to trick victims into allowing access to their devices so they can steal their personal information. Being aware of potential phishing scams is one way to help protect your personal information. Because phishing scams are getting harder and harder to spot on your own, LifeLock can help. LifeLock alerts you to more uses of your personal information and fixes identity theft issues that arise, guaranteed. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second and detects and alerts you to a wide range of threats, well beyond what you can see on your own. If your identity is stolen, your dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it guaranteed or your money back. Plus, you're backed by the LifeLock $1 Million Protection Package with up to $3 million in coverage. Start protecting your identity today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/iHeart. That's LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Mariah Carey's Christmas Time. Your favorite holiday tradition, live across North America. Mariah Carey, performing the best holiday songs and more. Get tickets now at livenation.com. A magical night with Mariah Carey's Christmas Time.
When it comes to getting you back to feeling right at home, Alpha's there by your side when you need us most. Handling your claims quickly. Because now is better than soon, and paid is better than pending. We make sure everything's taken care of, so you can get back to what matters most. That's life with Alpha Insurance. Visit alphainsurance.com to learn more.
Lot pinched the bridge of his nose, a futile attempt to stave off the headache that had been building since they left Egypt. His men's constant grumbling had become a persistent drone, amplified by the slow, tortuous pace of their journey through the desert. So large had he and Abram's caravans become that they were forced to move through the miserable wilderness in stages. He guessed that even a tortoise could have outpaced them. And if they had thought resources were scarce during the famine and then again in the desert, returning to Canaan was nothing but a disappointment. Lot was shaken by their experience in Egypt. Being rebuked by Pharaoh bruised his ego, and now they were forced to return to the place between Bethel and Ai, where they had first settled in Canaan. They were not exactly welcomed back with open arms from their neighbors. The Canaanites and Perizzites had barely survived the famine in their region. If they had been indifferent to Abram and Lot's people before the famine, they had turned downright hostile at their return. It certainly didn't help that their numbers had tripled, straining the resources of the land past their limit. The hill country had already been limited in its ability to provide the flocks. As Lot surveyed the expanse, he realized how much famine had devastated the already limited region. Lot then considered the riches. Their camp was laden with silver and gold from the Egyptians, gifts that would have been Sarai's dowry. Abram considered them bitter reminders of his deceit, but Lot refused to assign such sentiments to the fortune that had made him a very rich man. Their accumulated wealth made them easy targets for raids from their aggressive neighbors. So, everyone was on edge between being on their guard for any threats and squabbling over watering holes and grazing pastures, especially Lot. Lot's camp buzzed with unrest. His herdsmen, wearied and wary, approached him with grievances.
So, you see, Master, this is the fourth time we've caught one of Abram's shepherds herding our goats away from the grazing land.
Right. So 10 times, Master. And there's not enough to go around as it is. Abram's men are getting greedy. They think they're more important than us.
Lot, you see? It's just as I was telling you this morning. Your uncle overreacts. His high opinion of himself trickles down to his men. He may be content to rot here and feel guilty about what happened in Egypt, but in the meantime, he will drive our resources into the ground.
Lot's headache flared as his wife continued, her criticism relentless. She never understood their hasty departure from Egypt and resented Sarai's now withdrawn demeanor. Edith's constant meddling felt like a thorn in Lot's side.
And I'll tell you another thing, Lot. I suspect our flocks have intermingled in these tight quarters. Boy, weren't you just saying that to your father as you came to our tent? Tell me, shepherd, how have you been tracking what is ours?
My lady, we're doing all we can to protect the flocks, but our men are spread thin, taking on watches outside and inside the camp. We're watching for more than just Abram's shepherds. We've fended off a couple of raids these last few days. The clansmen from the hill country know that we've got silver and gold.
We can't afford our wealth to just walk off. Listen, do what you can to maintain the defenses at camp, and I'll have a talk with Abram about his men.
Maintain the defenses? Shouldn't we strengthen them? You wouldn't want something terrible to befall me or our daughters, would you?
That's enough, Edith! I said I'll take care of it, all right? I know how to take care of this family. Thank you for the report, men. I'll send Abram straight away. Report back to me tomorrow. You're dismissed.
Lot rubbed his temples. The headache had at last settled in. His wife sauntered off once the two shepherds filed out of their tent. He wasn't sure how Abram would respond to these allegations, or even what resolution they could come to. They would likely need to move on from this area before they were in all-out war with the neighboring clans. But then, that didn't solve the problem of their two caravans living side by side. They were sure to deplete any area they settled within months, if not weeks. The old Abram, the Abram Lot had known all his life, would have a solution. But with this new Abram who followed a god Lot did not fully understand, with this Abram, Lot was not so sure of what he would do. Lot was eager to step into this legacy Abram spoke about, and when their path had led to such fortune in Egypt, he could not have been more pleased with that turn of events. Though it was not the original plan Abram had relayed from his God. As for Lot, he wanted to believe and could believe in a God who could make him so rich, but they seemed to have come up against an obstacle here. He just hoped Abram would be in the right frame of mind to help him solve it. Lot approached Abram, where he kneeled at the altar he had built the last time they settled in this land. Lot made sure to announce his presence with the scuff of his feet against the dusty ground.
Uncle?
Yes, dear nephew.
I had a matter I wished to discuss with you.
Abram stood and remained silent. Lot took this as his cue to speak first.
My herdsmen, they're at it again, Abram. They're complaining that your herdsmen are depriving my animals of water and grazing land.
Has it come to blows this time?
Not yet, but give it time and it will. I mean, come on, we can't afford to have our men fighting each other when we've got enemies all around us. This is a disaster waiting to happen, Abram, a total disaster.
Yes, we must find a way to deal with these clans.
Deal with them? Deal with them?
Perhaps we can move about and...
How? We can't match them if they raise an army, Abram. A truce? Please, a truce isn't going to happen unless they get something out of it. Maybe we need to think of some sort of alliance. You know, my daughters will be of age soon, if you get my drift.
Lot, we've seen how these clans treat their people. They sanction such cruelty in their warfare, and the worship of their vengeful gods involves human sacrifice and other unsavory acts. I'm not so sure we should compromise our ways.
Our ways? What ways, Abram? What are you talking about?
To assimilate into their culture.
This God you're following, he's got no written texts, no priests, nothing!
We are following the God who led us here, and...
We're just out here making it up as we go along. I mean, what are we even doing here, Abram?
As we obey and follow him, I'm beginning to peel back the layers of this God. He's still a mystery to me, but I know these tribal gods bring out the worst in people, while the God I'm following brings out the best. I can't bind myself to them, Lot.
But what are we supposed to do? Our men are at each other's throats, Abram. And we can't agree on anything. It's like a bad fever dream.
Tensions are high. It seems that there are quarrels to settle every other day, and our herds are only getting thinner. The land never fully recovered from the famine. It cannot sustain us both. Not for much longer, anyway.
What are you suggesting?
We must separate.
Separate? What are you talking about, separate? Wait, what about the legacy of our families? We left everything behind, our homes, our friends, our land, and now you're telling me we're just gonna split up? Just like that?
It's not so easy, Lot. I asked you to come with me because you've always been more of a brother than a nephew. With Nahor hundreds of miles away, looking after our father's legacy, you and Sarai are the only family I have left. But we cannot live in strife like this. Look at what is before you.
Abram closed the gap between himself and Lot, clapping a hand on his shoulder as he turned him to see the sweeping vista his raised altar site offered. The Jordan River cut through the circular plain before them, generously watering the lands on either side of its mighty banks. The Jordan flowed into the Salt Sea, and off in the distance, almost due south, they could just make out the shape of the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah on the horizon. So fertile was the river valley that it reminded Abram of their time in Egypt along the Nile. It even stirred memories of a story passed down through their family history of a lush, forgotten garden that had disappeared at the beginning of time. Abram watched as Lot turned to look over their shoulders to the east, toward the great sea. They could not see it because of the rocky foothills that eventually gave way to mountains. The terrain was dry and cracked, and what resources were to be had were hoarded by walled cities and untold numbers of foreign enemies. Lot turned back to the rich plain, and Abram watched his hungry eyes take it all in, presumably calculating the productivity of the land that would now be unburdened from having to share it with Abram. Lot seemed irritable when he first confronted Abram, but all discomfort appeared to be gone now, as Lot had turned positively ravenous, taking in the land before him. Abram knew in his heart what Lot's decision would be before he even asked the question, but he asked regardless.
What do you think? The whole land is before us, but I will let you decide. Which way will you go?
You would let me choose? Me?
I would. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left.
It was an effort for Lot to tear his gaze from the more favorable river plain and to look at Abram in genuine surprise. Though his mind had been made up long before this inevitable conversation, Abram still felt the weight the decision would surely bring. In his time praying and waiting to hear from his God by the altar, this idea of separation had been stirred up in his mind. Abram couldn't help but wonder if this was another test. He had not trusted his God when the famine struck the land, leading to disastrous results. He was still navigating the damage it had caused Sarai and was rebuilding her trust. Abram felt more alone than he had in years. Second only to Sarai, his relationship with Lot was the most dear to him, but he was feeling the strain of quarreling between their people and feared that it would undo them. Abram had prayed to his God about how to bring this up with Lot, and to his surprise, Lot suddenly appeared before him. It seemed time to present him with this decision and see what he would choose. Abram had resolved to trust that his God would provide for him and his people regardless of which direction Lot decided to go. To his credit, Lot stuffed down his gluttonous expression and turned to face Abram again.
But we would be apart? Just like that?
You will always be my family, Lot. I will abide by your decision. My God has promised me a great nation, and I hope you will still be a part of it. No matter where you settle your tents and herds,
You honor me by allowing me to take the land of my choosing, Uncle. Really, you do. Since you've offered it to me, I'll take the Jordan Plains for my family and herds. That's the direction we'll go.
So close to Sodom. Are you sure?
I think the proximity of the city would prove useful to me. Yeah, useful.
Very well. Then I will consider the other directions. Go in peace, Lot. My brother. My friend.
The two shared an embrace. Abram watched Lot leave, heart aching but resolved. Just before Lot receded from view, Abram shouted back to him,
Lot!
Lot turned. Worry wrinkled the top of his brow. Had Abram reconsidered? Abram's face shrunk with loving concern.
Be careful near those cities. I fear the influence of their culture is more dangerous than their spears.
Lot waved his hand casually. With a dismissive tone, he shouted back to his uncle,
My mind is a locked vault of integrity, Abram. You know this. Farewell! Ha ha ha!
Lot's departure was a surprising weight off Abram's chest. It was one less voice competing against the small whispers of the God he desperately tried to hear. Soon after their agreement had been struck, Lot did precisely as he had said. He moved his caravan east to follow the Euphrates River until they finally reached and settled outside Sodom. The quarreling had ceased among his men in the absence of Lot's men, but there were still dangers from the neighboring clans, and the land could not support them for much longer. Abram continued to go to the altar he had built and waited each day to hear from God. It was on one of these mornings the same familiar stillness permeated the hill upon which Abram was sitting. Knowing what to expect this time, but still struggling to keep his heartbeat steady, Abram bowed his head and braced himself for the booming voice and all-consuming presence.
Abram, look around you. Behold the land to not only the east, but also the north, south, and west. As I told you before, this is the land I will give to you and your offspring, and it will be yours forever.
Yes, my God. I remember what you told me.
Do you believe it, though? I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth. If there was ever anyone who could count up all the dust of the earth, and there is not, then your offspring could also be counted.
Abram again felt a steadiness, an assuredness come over him. He felt comforted by his God's words, and they pushed back his doubts and fears about an uncertain future.
You are to get up and walk around this land. I will show you where to go, and what's more, I will give it to you. You will need not take it. I would provide you with everything you need.
Abram, heartened and empowered by the words of his God, did exactly as he was told. He traveled south until he reached the city of Hebron, where he was surprised to find that they were met by hospitality and great kindness from an Amorite chief named Mamre. An alliance was formed between their two great families, and Abram knew this to be a sign that his God was protecting him and giving him success in the promised land of Canaan.
Mariah Carey's Christmas Time. Your favorite holiday tradition, live across North America. Mariah Carey, performing the best holiday songs and more. Get tickets now at livenation.com. A magical night with Mariah Carey's Christmas Time.
When it comes to getting you back to feeling right at home, Alpha's there by your side when you need us most. Handling your claims quickly, because now is better than soon, and paid is better than pending. We make sure everything's taken care of, so you can get back to what matters most. That's life with Alpha Insurance. Visit alphainsurance.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm Cindy Crawford, and I'm the founder of Meaningful Beauty. Well, I don't know about you, but I never liked being told, oh, wow, you look so good for your age. Why even bother saying that? Why don't you just say you look great at any age, every age? That's what Meaningful Beauty is all about. We create products that make you feel confident in your skin at the age you are now.
Meaningful Beauty. Beautiful skin at every age. Learn more at meaningfulbeauty.com.
Wow, what a story. I have to say, this chapter in Genesis hit me in a way that I didn't expect. The drama, the tension, the choices. Abram and Lot's herdsmen were at each other's throats. This land of plenty, which had made both Abram and Lot very wealthy, could no longer support both men's flocks and herds. So Abram, the peacemaker, offered Lot the first choice of the land. If you go to the left, then I'll go to the right. Lot looked and he saw a lush Jordan Valley, as enticing as the forbidden tree, and he chose what looked good and seemed prosperous. But here's the twist. Lot pitched his tents near Sodom, a city already infamous for its wickedness. Just like Lot's choice, the superficial allure of wealth and beauty can blind us to the dangers that lurk beneath. Abram, on the other hand, settled in Canaan, trusting God with the outcome. This radical faith and trust in God's unseen promise set Abram apart. After the two men separated, God's promise to his chosen people was reaffirmed when he told Abram, lift up your eyes from where you are and look north and south and east and west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Let's talk about that really interesting phase, dust of the earth. You see, God wasn't just making a poetic metaphor. He was declaring a truth about the future of the Jewish people. The dust, scattered and innumerable, represent us, the Jewish people, chosen and cherished, spread across the globe, but still part of a singular destiny. You see, our history, rich with trials and triumphs, is like the dust. Often stepped upon, disregarded, but ever present and unyielding. It's been asked if the success of the Jewish people is a result of our history of suffering or despite it. You see, our ancestors faced unimaginable hardships, from slavery in Egypt to persecutions and pogroms to the horrors of the Holocaust. But through every trial and each tragedy, we have risen. Jewish tradition teaches that suffering refines the soul. It brings us actually closer to God. Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, known as the Rav, speaks of suffering not just as a test, but as a chance for tshuva, for repentance, for a return to God. To see this, we only need to look at olim, immigrants to Israel, who have arrived in the Holy Land from the four corners of the earth with nothing but hope and faith. In the early days of the modern state of Israel, and even before Israel won its independence, waves of Jews came from Europe and Arab lands, escaping persecution and seeking a new beginning. They arrived with little more than the clothing on their backs. These early pioneers slept in tents and worked the rocky soil. They faced hunger, disease, and the constant threat of attack. Yet they sang songs of joy, for they were in the promised land, and that was enough for them. Their suffering shaped them, and their resilience defined them. They built homes, farms, and schools. They built a nation. Their story is Abram's story, and our story, a testament to the promise that we are like the dust of the earth, countless and enduring, is the story of our people. This leads us to another word found in this text, the Hebrew word negev, which literally means dry lands or desert. It conjures images of arid landscapes, scarcity, a wasteland as far as the eye can see, and it starkly contrasts with the Jordan Valley, where Lot chose to dwell, somewhere lush and green that promised immediate sustenance and wealth. But Lot's choice came with a caveat: the location's proximity to the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's eyes focused on the here and the now. And we look back at history and we see that reaching for what's immediately enticing has gotten humanity in trouble since the beginning of creation. We've seen it time and time again in the Bible stories, which we've already studied. Just as Adam and Eve saw the fruit and reached for it, Lot saw the lush plains near Sodom. They were enticing, so Lot reached for them. As Genesis 13:11 tells us, so Lot chose for himself the whole plan of Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. But the great Jewish commentator Rashi reads verse 11 this way, that Lot set out from the east. Rashi notes that the Hebrew word for east, hedem, is similar to the word kadmon, which means originator. And so you have kedem, which is east, and kadmon, which is originator, and originator as in the originator of the world, God. That's what it means. So you can read that verse in its original Hebrew in a very different way. Read it this way, with the Hebrew word kadmon meaning originator, and Lot's words are stunning. This is what it says. I don't want Abram, and I don't want his God. That has a very different meaning. Lot not only chose immediacy for the rich and lush earth, he chose not to follow God, the God of faith. But Abraham chose differently. He chose the opposite. He chose the path Adam and Eve and Lot should have chosen. Abraham chose to trust in the unseen. So what does this reveal about Abraham? Well, I think it reveals everything. It reveals his trust, his humility, his belief in the God who keeps his promises. And what does it inspire in us? In me, it inspires that same trust, that same dependence on a God who never fails. Lot's choice speaks to the allure of the visible, the tangible, the now. That's the story of humanity, isn't it? That we're too often drawn to what looks good on the surface, even when danger is not far off. We choose the fertile plains, even if it means pitching our tents near Sodom. We choose to go the opposite way of faith because it just looks easier. But Abram, our man of faith, our forefather of faith, made a different choice, a difficult choice, but the faithful, correct choice. And that is what we can learn from him. Abram looked at the Negev, the desert, the place of apparent scarcity, and he trusted. He trusted in God's provision, in God's plan, and in God's unseen promise. Abram's journey, faith, and trust in God's promises are threads in the grand narrative that continues throughout the story of the chosen people and on into the Christian Bible. To speak more on that is our dear friend, Bishop Paul Lanier.
Thank you, Yael. You know, when I look at this Genesis chapter 13, the first thing that moves my own heart is the faithfulness and the generosity of our covenant God, especially in the life of Abraham. And I've already referenced that New Testament or Christian scripture of the book of Hebrews chapter 11, where it says that Abraham pursued a city whose builder and maker is God. And consequently, God prospered Abraham. Where there was an altar, there was a blessing. And Abraham's hands were filled with silver and gold, and his fields were filled with herds and flocks and tents and servants. But not only was Abraham blessed, Not only was he surrounded and saturated by the good things of God, but so was his nephew, Lot. Now, why was Lot so prosperous? He too had silver and gold and tents and servants and herds and flocks. Why? Was it because he enjoyed some consequential conversation with the covenant God? No. It's simply that he walked with the covenant man who conversed intimately with the covenant God. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm talking to people right now, and you know there's somebody sleeping on your couch that's being blessed, not because they're walking with God, but because you are. They have food to eat because you allow them to sit at your table. Again, it's not because they are intimate with God, but they're actually living off the blessing that you've provided for them. That's what's happening here with Abraham and Lot. But do you know, if you don't know what to do with a blessing, and if you forget where the blessing comes from, it can ruin your life. The Bible says not only did Abraham have servants, but also Lot did, and the blessing became so expansive, so extraordinary, and prosperity was so full in their lives that the servants of both Abraham and Lot began to quarrel and to argue about land and wells and all the blessing. And finally, Abraham said, "No, we're not doing this. We're not arguing between us. We're blessed and we love each other and we are family. So I want you, nephew, to look over all the territory, the terrain, the blessing, the land, and you choose that piece of property that speaks to you, and I'll take whatever's left, because the land is not my source. It's the God of the land who is my source." And the Bible says that Lot did look. He found a piece of property. Later we would know it as Sodom and Gomorrah, but when he saw it, he thought it looked something like the Garden of Eden. The Bible says that when Lot left, God spoke to Abraham. Some of us are one departure away from the most consequential conversations of our lives with God. Once Lot was gone, the situation begins to change more. Sometimes the Isaac can't come because Lot is sleeping in his room. But once Lot was gone, God says, "Now I want you to look to your north, south, east, and west, and if your eyes can behold it, it is yours." And Abraham did look, and something started changing in his relationship, not only with God, but with the land itself. And he yet built another altar and worshiped God. I'm praying for you right now, and I'm praying for the relationships of your life. It's good to love. It's wonderful to love. We're called to love, but we can't allow anyone to come between us and our relationship with God. Sometimes a lot can come between us and our covenant conversation, even with an Isaac, even with the land that God wants us to have, the blessing He's assigned to us. And I'm praying now that you're able to move specifically and perfectly in that conversation of promise that God has for you.
Abram's story encourages us to trust God's timing and provision, even when it means walking away from what looks good. In our fast-paced, results-driven world, Abram's faith teaches us to look beyond the immediate, to trust in God's provision, and to seek His kingdom first. When faced with difficult decisions, let's trust in God's promise and provision. Let's seek God's kingdom and His righteousness. Let's choose God. Let me conclude with a blessing to you, directly from the Bible. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face to you and give you peace. As we say in Hebrew, Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'yechunecha, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha, Shalom. My friends, live not as a people of fear, but as a people of hope, guided by the light of the one who delivered us from bondage and promises to deliver us once again. Amen.
You can listen to The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein ad-free by downloading and subscribing to the pray.com app today. This pray.com production is only made possible by our dedicated team of creative talents. Steve Katina, Max Bard, Zach Schellebarger, and Ben Gammon are the executive producers of The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein, edited by Alberto Avila, narrated by Paul Coltofianu. Characters are voiced by Jonathan Cotton, Aaron Salvato, Sarah Seltz, Mike Reagan, Stephen Ringwald, Sylvia Zaradok, and the opening prayer is voiced by John Moore. Music by Andrew Morgan Smith. Written by Bree Roseley and Aaron Salvato. Special thanks to Bishop Paul Lanier, Caleb Burrows, Jocelyn Fuller, and the team at International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. You can hear more pray.com productions on the pray.com app, available on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. If you enjoyed The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein, please rate and leave a review.
Mariah Carey's Christmas Time. Your favorite holiday tradition, live across North America. Mariah Carey, performing the best holiday songs and more. Get tickets now at livenation.com. A magical night with Mariah Carey's Christmas Time.
Every day when you log into ChumbaCasino.com, the ultimate online social casino, you get a free daily bonus. Imagine if you got daily bonuses in other parts of your life.
I chose French fries over loaded French fries.
I asked Stuart from accounting about his weekend, even though I don't care.
I updated my operating system without having to call tech support.
Collect your free daily bonus at ChumbaCasino.com now. And live the Chumba life. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Wake up at Holiday Inn Express to a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. Count on all the hot, fresh coffee you need and an incredible breakfast buffet that has something for everyone, like eggs, cinnamon rolls, and even hot, fresh pancakes with all the toppings you crave. Next time, do yourself a favor and stay at a Holiday Inn Express with a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. So, when you wake up at Holiday Inn Express, you'll wake up happy, a part of IHG Hotels and Resorts.